partisan purposes. They are nakedly partisan, and John Brennan should not get anywhere within 10,000 yards of the government. He should have a restraining order.
Whoa, those are very strong words. Would that apply to, for instance, Robert Gates, who worked for Democrats and Republicans? He wrote a book where he said some pretty strong things about President Obama in terms of his confidence in his ability to lead. So would you include him on a list like that?
What I would do is probably try not to make it individuals. I probably think the best way to do this, and the White House may well decide this. I don't know what they will decide. That's why I think they'll probably look through how something can be rolled out. I think they believe that these people should no longer get information, but sometimes it's better to have a policy that doesn't have a name, that basically says those who are retired lose their clearance.
But that's not what Sarah Huckabee Sanders did today, Senator. She was very specific, and she named specific individuals who have been incredibly critical of the president.
I don't disagree with it, and I think it can be ad hoc as well. And I think John Brennan has indicated he should not have clearance. So I think you can also have individual reasons why individuals should have their clearance.
Those individuals say that we're living in unprecedented times, and that is what has provoked them to be so critical and so outspoken with the kind of language that you talk about. What do you say to them about that?
I think they're deranged. It's Trump derangement syndrome. People saying, oh, no, there's not going to be democracy. When did President Trump come out against democracy or voting? I mean, these things are so over the top. I mean, most Democrats in Congress were for engagement with Russia under President Obama. Now, to a person, they act as if you're anything short of wanting war with Russia, that you're not doing enough. Every day they want new sanctions, this and that. And it's like, do they not remember that even though Reagan called the Soviet Union an evil empire, he sat down with Gorbachev and he didn't hurl epithets at Gorbachev. They had a reasonable conversation, and because they did, we had nuclear arms reductions, and it was a huge step forward for world peace. That can happen again, but not if we're deranged by politics.
All right. Well, one last unrelated question. I know that you all received the documents from Brett Kavanaugh on Friday. Did you have a chance to look at them, and how will you vote?
We've been reviewing them for some time now, and I'm going to meet with Brett Kavanaugh tomorrow. I have an open mind. I'm undecided. I am very concerned, though, about the Fourth Amendment. I do not believe that you can have a blanket exception to the Fourth Amendment for national security. The Fourth Amendment was meant to limit the government, and if the government just says, oh, we're going to do this for national security, and there's an exemption to the Fourth Amendment, that's very, very troubling. So we're going to have, I hope, a spirited discussion about the Fourth Amendment, and we'll see where the chips lie at the end.
We will look forward to that. Senator, always good to see you. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Here now, Judge Jeanine Pirro, host of Justice with Judge Jeanine and author of the new book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, which has been getting a lot of attention. It's #1. Thanks to Jeanine and her writing, and also a little bit thanks to Whoopi Goldberg. Woof!
Oh, indeed.
That was unbelievable. That was unbelievable. Jeanine, good to see you tonight. Thanks for being here. I want to ask you about what I was just talking to Senator Rand Paul about. Do you think that the White House's decision to pursue eliminating the security clearance for all of those individuals, including John Brennan, Michael Hayden, James Clapper, is that wise?
Well, you know what? I think the one thing that we're not really clear on is whether or not anyone is entitled to this security clearance. My understanding is that there is a sunset period. We're not sure when it is. It could be 5 years. But then someone has to go in and renew it. But then there are other individuals who may have it for life. Here's the bottom line. The whole purpose of these of security clearance or continuing is for the institutional knowledge. So someone who's in the position now can call up and say, what was it like when you were there? And I don't have any problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is when someone does go on television who was the head of the CIA and he says that, the president is in, he's in the lap of Putin or whatever language he used. People tend to grant more credibility. It's not about the First Amendment. It's like, this guy's got to know he's got security clearance.
But they're all essentially saying, Jeanine, that this isn't going to change anything about their language. And you just heard Senator Rand Paul. He said, I'm not looking to curb anyone's speech. They're free to speak. So it comes off looking like an action that is just taken to be vindictive and to try to shut them up, and it probably won't work.
Well, you know what? It's not meant to be vindictive because they can say whatever it is they'd like to say. But when they say it with the benefit of having a national security clearance, where someone like, a Sandy Berger goes in and, he takes out certain documents, we have to look at each individual case. But more importantly, I think, is that why do they have them? If someone lies to Congress, should they have that security clearance? And I think it's time for a conversation on this, that there's got to be more guidelines and more look-see as to who's got it and why.
So do you agree with Rand Paul that it should be a blanket situation for former CIA officials? Because he's essentially saying that they used to be statesmanlike and have some decorum, but now that they don't, they should all lose that privilege across the board. And he doesn't like the idea, as Sarah Sanders did today, to name individual names and say these are the people we want to target.
Yeah, no, I don't see that it should be just a blanket. If there is a reason, just as if there were a renewal, there would have to be an approval, there would have to be an okay. That same, criteria should be used in assessing whether or not they should keep a security clearance.
All right, so in terms of the collusion investigation, I just want to play this from Adam Schiff over the weekend. It's sort of typical Adam Schiff, but let's play it because here's the latest.
I certainly think he's acting like someone who's compromised, and it may very well be that he is compromised, or it may very well be that he believes that he's compromised, that the Russians have information on him.
What do you think?
You know what? This is more of, we're going to get to the evidence in this Russia collusion case. Just stay with us. Stay with us. It's a bunch of nonsense, and I'll tell you why. I did a little research. Clinton met with Putin on separate occasions, 99, 2000. Bush had Putin at his ranch in Crawford, Texas. He was with him 2001, 2007. Obama was with him 2009, 13, 14, 15, after the annexation of Crimea, and 16. So, look. Let's not turn this into, the boogeyman is showing up. Presidents have met with Putin not just one time, but they've had him at their ranches and in their residences. I mean,
Absolutely.
Come on, this is
every
a lot
president
of
has believed that they were going to be the one to sort of change this relationship and this dynamic, and they've all worked hard at doing it. Just one last question for you. The news today that Michael Cohen, that there are 12 tapes that the president could be on them. Do you think that's of concern to the president?
Well, knowing the president, I'm sure he's not concerned. But, I think that it obviously depends on what is on the tapes. My understanding is that the president waived the privilege. Since a lot of this stuff was already leaked, he didn't seem to be concerned about it.
Janine, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. And we will see you again soon. Hope to see you next time back in New York. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So coming up next, President Trump ratchets up the pressure on Iran, and his critics are not happy. But is his administration on the verge of doing something that both President Obama and President Bush failed to do? Former State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf joins me next. Also coming up, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham.
The level of corruption and wealth among Iranian leaders shows that Iran is run by something that resembles the mafia more than a government.
So President Trump letting it rip on Twitter last night, lashing out at Iran's supreme leader after he said this about the U.S. plan to snap back sanctions on Iran's oil empire.
Do not play with the lion's tail, or else you will regret it. It will bring you eternal regret.
That led to this from the president, in all caps, I might add: never, ever threaten the United States again. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious! Exclamation point. So what is the next step? What is the White House's policy towards Iran now that we've backed out of the deal?
What is stopping this administration from just openly advocating regime change in Iran?
If we have any further announcements on that front, I'll let you know. But the president and his administration are going to continue pushing and advocating.
So there has been nudging towards regime change in one way or another for more than a decade, and perhaps one very big missed golden opportunity. 5 months into the Obama administration, uprisings in Iran culminated in the 2009 shooting of Neda Agha Sultan, which riveted the world's attention and perhaps presented a moment that might have been pivotal. With outrage in the streets against the mullahs, President Obama remained silent. Years later, he pushed the Iran deal, which critics have said, failed to insist on any time, anywhere inspections. The administration then sent bags of money totaling $1.7 billion to seal that deal. Joining me now, former State Department spokesperson under President Obama, Maria Harf, now a Fox News analyst and co-host of the Benson and Harf radio show. Always good to see you, Maria. Thank you for being here tonight. So, it seems that what we're seeing here is the same kind of back and forth that we witnessed with the North Korean leader. We are now seeing with Rouhani. What is wrong with pushing his buttons, given all that Iran continues to carry out in the Middle East?
Well, I think it's good to be tough on Iran, particularly given what they're doing in the region. I agree with that. But my question to President Trump, first about the tweet, or else what? What is he threatening, right? I get it that he wants to talk tough, but that's not
the snapback for the sanctions is coming.
But that's not, I don't think he was tweeting about snapback. With all due respect to the president, he sounded like he was trying to be tough. But the bigger question I have is, what is the plan, right? The president pulled out of the Iran deal, pledging to negotiate a, quote, better deal. To this point, we have not seen any movement on negotiations. Mike Pompeo has been very focused on North Korea, hasn't been as focused on Iran. But look, they pulled out of the Iran deal and pledged a better policy. And as of yet, we haven't seen any new policy, any new deal. And it doesn't look like anyone's actually focused on that. So tough talk is one thing. We haven't seen any action yet.
Let's take a look at what Mike Pompeo said, because it was very interesting. He was quite focused, actually, on Iran over the weekend, speaking to a large group that included a lot of Iranians and a lot of American Iranians who for decades have wanted us to stand by their side to overthrow, essentially, or to encourage the change of regime in Iran. So watch this.
The BBG is launching a new 24/7 Farsi language TV channel. It will span not only television, but radio, digital, and social media format, so that the ordinary Iranians inside of Iran and around the globe can know that America stands with them.
I mean, that's what they want to hear, Marie, and that's what they felt they did not hear in 2009 in the Obama administration.
Well, it's an interesting idea. I think communicating with average Iranians is a very good thing. We tried to do that in the Obama administration, but here's the challenge, Martha, that we have also heard from a lot of Iranian dissidents and people who want regime change or want a better relationship with the U.S., that the U.S. overtly helping them actually discredits them at home, that when the U.S. is very bellicose or gets close to calling for regime change, it actually empowers the hardliners back in Iran, the people we don't want to empower. So you're walking a fine line here, because if we actually want...
I understand, but their economy is in tatters. They did use that money to continue to support Hamas, to sow discord in Yemen.
Sure.
They've used that money for all the wrong things.
That's true.
And they have not put it back into their economy. So there are ways to encourage them to open up. Twitter was one of the main drivers in the last uprising that we saw. So what do you suggest? What is the right way?
Well, one thing I'm concerned about is that by withdrawing from the Iran deal and doing it unilaterally, we actually said to the Iranian regime and to the Iranian people that the U.S. can't be trusted. We promised that the U.S. would be a part of this deal along with the rest of the world. And we broke that promise to them. So it's not about the regime. The Iranian people, I think, after that decision, looked at us and said, wait a second, we can't trust the U.S.'s word. Going forward, Martha, this administration that I know is very focused on Iran.
Why would the people of Iran support the deal when none of the money that they got for it ever went to them?
A lot of it actually did go to them. Some of it didn't, Martha, but a lot of it actually did. And we saw their economy coming back. We saw they were able to get more economic opportunities. And then Donald Trump closed that door. So going forward, we have to support voices in Iran standing up to the regime, but we have to do it with the goal of not emboldening the hardliners. And sometimes the president's really extreme rhetoric actually, I think, helps hardliners say, look, the U.S. is our enemy. They can't be trusted. That's not the impression we want to give the Iranian people.
Thanks, Marie.
Of course, happy to be here.
So here now, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Good to see you as always, sir. What do you think?
Everything she says is wrong. Number one, she's a nice lady. The Iran nuclear deal went to the Congress and it was rejected in a bipartisan fashion, but we didn't get 60 votes. It was voted on in the House in a bipartisan vote of rejection. It's not a treaty. Trump's not bound by the worst deal since Munich. So I am so pleased that Pompeo made the Reagan speech toward Iran like Reagan made toward the Soviet Union. I am so pleased that President Trump is letting the Iranian president know there's a new sheriff in town. Everything Obama did not work. He would crawl through glass to get this deal with the Ayatollah, who took all the money, not the people. We're on the verge of history here. The Trump doctrine when it comes to Iran was Ronald Reagan's doctrine when it came to the Soviet Union. It is an evil empire. We're going to stand with the people. I'm going to introduce a resolution soon siding with the Iranian people against the regime, and let's see how Congress votes.
And how will that work?
Well, I'll have a resolution saying that we stand with the Iranian people for their right to self-determination, condemning the regime for holding American sailors hostage on the high seas, for disrupting the Mideast, for murdering innocent Iranians who just want to be able to determine their own future. We're going to, it'd be an indictment against the Ayatollah and his henchmen. This is the worst regime in the world in terms of threats. Russia, North Korea are threats. Radical Islam like Al-Qaeda are threats. But the biggest threat of all to me is this regime in Iran. They're religious Nazis who are trying to develop a nuclear capability. And the question is, would they hit Riyadh and Saudi Arabia first or go to Jerusalem? The Arabs and the Israelis are now united against Iran. Mike Pompeo's speech was awesome. President Trump's tweet says there's a new sheriff in town. We're going to bring this regime down by helping the Iranian people. Regime change is the only way to save Mideast from just perpetual conflict. This regime needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, how do you do that, though? And you know, what about, you said Maria was wrong in everything she said, but what do you think about the fact that sometimes this kind of talk can embolden the hardliners? What's your response to that?
There are no moderates. Nobody is running Iran except the Ayatollah. If you want to run for office, you have to get his permission. They knock everybody off the ballot that they don't like. So there are no moderates in Iran. Break their back economically, impose sanctions on their oil, drive them out of Syria. Don't cut a deal with Russia to give them Syria. Stand up to them throughout the entire Mideast. Help Israel deal with the Iranian Hezbollah threat. Break their economy. Stand with the Iranian people. Get information into Iran that will drive the Iranian regime crazy. We're on the verge of history here with Iran, and I want to compliment President Trump and Mike Pompeo. We're about to pull off something very big.
Fascinating. Senator, thank you. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you.
So 105 days until the midterm elections, and what if we told you that in some circles, the president's approval rating has actually been going up over the course of the last couple of weeks? Karl Rove and Mike Allen here to explain how they see all of this playing out in the midterms and what voters now say is the most important thing on their minds when they look towards that election. It may surprise you. Next.
You know, my story about winning, we're going to win so much, you'll get tired of